start. You ready?
Yeah, let's roll.
All right, Jaime, welcome to Shake Stir and Mingle. Thank you for joining me.
Ashley, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this all morning.
Yes, we have certainly been looking forward to this. Now, it's too early for me to get started with a toast, but maybe later on I'll sprinkle and dibble and dabble in a little bit.
Sounds great to me.
How about you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jaime Salas. I am the head of Advocacy for the Agave portfolio at Proximo Spirits. So I have the fun, I'd say task, but really it's been a lifestyle. It's been a passion project of representing some of the world's most popular tequila brands and really agave brands, because we also branch out into mezcal and who knows what else in the future.
Did you see yourself in 2024 being at this point in your life?
I did not, especially given everything we went through to get us here, right? A pandemic, et cetera,
Yes.
and how we survived that doing this type of work. When the very premise
Right.
of this job is to engage with folks like you, consumers, bartenders, people that essentially touch our brands or drink our brands. So not being able to do that was tough. So no, I did not envision that I would
course.
still be not only here, but doing this in this way in 2024. It's been enlightening to say the least.
Yes, 100%. What would you say to yourself if we go back to that dark time of the pandemic and you're working on this and you're mostly home and virtual? What would you say to Jaime 2020?
I would say hold on, stay steadfast, right? Hang in there. The truth is, while everybody was home, maybe consuming or partaking in libations and cocktails and becoming their own home mixologists and all these things, right? I think what it did for me, it gave me a different sense of purpose. It was no longer
Right.
just talk about the category. I'm a huge fan, clearly, of promoting not only tequila drinking in terms of that cultural aspect, but the culture behind tequila production, right? Mexico. And so for me, it was an opportunity to sort of dig deeper, talk about that, and now branch into why things work the way they work. So I was able to do more telecasts, and from my kitchen, I'm sure audiences got tired of seeing my kitchen. I was on one weekly. I was showing them how to make different drinks with tequila, and I was giving substance to what people were already doing, which I think is different than what we do on the day-to-day when we're out in market, right? Which is to hold seminars, have classes, have really fun, engaging, experiential, branded moments, but to really just focus in on, well, this is why this is popularized, or this is why it's great, this is what works, this is why this works great in this particular cocktail, was something that I thought was very fun and brought us back to this place of why and wonderment, and not just
Yes.
not just like do, but rather, hey, curiosity, if you will. And I think that's
It kept
fun.
the fire going.
Yeah, exactly right. We're stoking
Yes.
the curiosity angle, if you will. Yeah.
Yes, keeping
Yeah.
people engaged. Keeping
That's
people
right.
engaged. Well, speaking of that, let's get into some icebreakers.
Oh,
Are you
give 'em to
ready?
me.
Are you nervous?
I might be just a tad nervous, which is, anyone who knows me knows it's rare, but it happens.
Well, tell me, what is your all-time favorite tequila cocktail?
This is an easy one.
Good.
Yeah, because tequila cocktail, I feel as though we're limited on, right? But what I do think is I think tequila works exceptionally well, and we'll get into that in a lot of different things. But in terms of tequila cocktail, one that's synonymous with tequila, I am
Yeah.
a Paloma fan over a margarita. Always have been.
Really?
Palomas are more my thing. I do tend to do riffs on them, different flavored palomas. I'll tend to make them savory. But I would say that's my preferred classic tequila cocktail. If you will.
Tell me about the spin on your last Paloma, the last one that you had.
The last one, I threw in a little bit of chipotle syrup. So I simmer some chipotles. I put them into a syrup, and the syrup base, I want to say I would incorporate a little bit of vanilla. If I recall correctly, It's been a minute. A little bit of vanilla, fresh grapefruit juice, ruby red. It's my preferred. Pressed it myself. A little bit of lime to give it some backbone, some acidity. I think I used in this instance, I used Maestro Dobel Diamante, which we'll get into, which is El
Yes.
Reposado Cristalino, which we'll talk more about. But I just thought it was, typically palomas are made with either a blanco or reposado style tequila, right? Traditionally.
Yes.
So there's two types, if you will. There's 100% agave and less than 100% agave, which we just simply refer to as tequila, right? And then and then within that, there's 5 different styles. You have your blancos or platinos, silvers, if you will. You have your reposados. You have your añejos, your extra añejos, and then you also have a category called joven style tequilas. And what they are essentially is they are defined by how much time they come in contact with barrel, if at all. So they're age statements, if you will, but it's not quite like whiskey. So if anybody's out there is a fan of whiskey, it's more about how many years. This is more about gamuts of time, if you will, intervals of time. So silvers, blancos, typically no aging at all, but if so, they can come in contact with some type of oak up to 2 months. Anything over 2 months has to be classified as a reposado, typically up to a year. Anything between a year and 3 years gets classified as an añejo, and anything over 3 years with no age limitations in terms of how long they go has to be called an extra añejo. Now, the joven category is a really interesting one because that's also established by my portfolio. And so if we think of Cuervo Especial, for example, at one point that just means that the tequila probably came in contact with some oak. Let's put it this way. The simplest way to put it, it's a silver tequila, but you blend it in a little bit of extra añejo, or you blend it in a little bit of añejo, and the idea was it softens and rounds it out, and that's one way not to just have a tequila that goes into a barrel, but really it's very young, spirited, sort of agave forward flavor. But the inclusion of that extra añejo or that añejo or any aged tequila just meant that it gave a little overlay of oak and it softened it up a little bit. So those are the 5 types. Yeah, those are the 5 types that are recognized in the industry, and we're going to get into one that isn't quite officially recognized as such, but it is a huge driving force right now.
We definitely want to hear more about that type. Listen, of course it was a margarita for me, when I first started out, but I'm more into the palomas now, 2024 Ashley.
Yeah.
21-year-old Ashley, it was a margarita.
Yeah.
Right? But, let's move on. For a fun fact, can you share an interesting or quirky fact about yourself that people wouldn't ordinarily know?
Yeah, this is always an interesting one because I feel like there's a lot of them, right? If I'm honest.
Yeah.
I think that for me, a little known fact, I think if you get to know me over dinner and it's 2 hours, whatever it is, I think at that point you get enough sense of me to understand that maybe I'm well traveled, maybe I've been around the world. I mean, that's a fact, right? I love to travel, and I grew up in major cities and that kind of thing. So you probably consider me and put me in a big city mentality, which wouldn't be far off. But the truth is, an interesting quirk about me is I was raised super cowboy. So the thing with me is my first shoes for school were cowboy boots.
Yes!
I learned how to ride horses really early on. I've been around livestock and horse most of my young life. And I think what's interesting about that, in particular right now when everybody's focused back to cowboys and sort of that kind of thing, is that my style of upbringing was very Mexican, was very Mexican cowboy, right? So, and there is a whole subset around that, around how we dress, which the U.S. kind of picked up a little bit on just because it's been around longer in Mexico, but it's something that's very endemic to us and something that's very popular and very much a lifestyle in the part of Mexico that we're from. So, so it's more traditionalist. And so I grew up like that. And people, every time they hear, they're like, wait, what? They're like, wait, Mr. likes fashion, likes drinks, likes to travel, likes to go to great restaurants. At heart, was raised wearing cowboy boots and hats and horseback riding. I'm like, yeah, that's a part of me that I absolutely enjoy. And every so often we go back to Mexico. Let's say we tour our distillery. Sometimes we pull horses out and we do go horseback riding. And that's something that I don't know. It's just I think very fondly of. So I think that's probably a quirk, if you will, or a fact that I think people wouldn't necessarily get to on their own, right, or understand.
I need to get some boots of my own. I need a hat.
Ashley, I got to tell you, at a young age, I was not happy about having to wear boots to enter. And everybody's on the playground with like tennies and like comfort, right? And I'm going, why? And my dad wouldn't let me live it down for a very long time. He said, hey, you like those boots. It's why I got them,
Yes.
but you hated wearing them to school. Because at the time I didn't understand that. I figured you'd want to wear them. And so for my dad, who always, that was his default shoe, was like, the only time he would wear sneakers was to the gym. His thing was, well, why wouldn't you? But as a kid, you can imagine, I felt
100%.
I felt outcasted and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's it's a little bit about me.
A little bit of a life lesson in there, from your father to just stay true to yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
No matter the setting.
That's right.
No matter the setting. If you can have a dinner party with 3 people,
God.
living or dead, give it to me. Who's joining you?
This is a great one because I rarely get asked this one. So give me all right. So I think for me it would have to be a bit of cultural exchange. So I would want people there that could sort of bring me back to a place and time and perhaps something that I either am into or what have you. So I would love to have Frida Kahlo there. Frida Kahlo to bring about her view on the Mexican Revolution, her take on, all these things, given she was so political, but also just, Mexico and sort of what she represented in that one dimension of Mexico, that multi-dimension, if you will. So I think her. I think the other one for me would probably be Salvador Dali. Because I'm a huge fan, but I also think he would be interesting at a dinner party, right? Because you want spirited conversation, you want debate, you want whatever it is.
You certainly do.
Right? So I think he would be a good one. Third one, I'll keep this one neutral, I suppose, because oftentimes I think to myself, well, there's got to be somebody in there that's going to really have a polarizing view on things that could make for good dinner conversation. It could also ruin a dinner. So we won't go that route. But I think, gosh, well, I'm going to keep something contemporary, somebody that's around now. And that's because another little known fact is I love music. Huge DJ. Huge DJ fan. And Sade is probably one of my favorite all-time singers. So I would love to have her there to perhaps shed some light on what she's been up to these last few years that we haven't heard from her.
Shoot that dinner party for an episode of Shake Stir and Mingle, I would. That sounds like a fun dinner.
That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
It definitely would.
Yeah,
it definitely would. I like that. I like that setup. That's a cool dinner party. All right, last question. What's one thing you love to do outside of your work with Proximo?
It's another good one. Work-life balance is important, and it's very tough when what you do for a living is something you're passionate by or that you really are passionate about. And
that you love.
So it becomes your life, right? So to break away from that and do something that truly is just for you is something that I'm just now truly enjoying exploring. And a lot of that has to do around nature. So about 2 years ago, I moved to California from New York City, and I'm really embracing any outdoor activities. So I go hiking. If I can get it in early in the morning before I start my day, I'll do that. I love exploring different parts of California. So road tripping has been a thing recently, getting back into my health and finding ways to integrate, to do things for health reasons out in nature and out of the gym has become my objective now. So
it's really grounding.
100%. Grounding is an exceptional word for that because I think that we don't engage with it enough. Having been in New York for so often, I remember coming to California on business trips and going hiking because it was such a novelty. Getting here, it's like, okay, now it's right there. Go and do it.
Yeah.
Then the challenge becomes finding the time and doing it. But the reward is huge. And so what that's done is opened up, listen, I won't belabor it, but basically I'm now taking up running, which I haven't done in forever.
Good for you.
Cycling is an obsession of mine that I'm just now getting into. A little fearful given the cost and implications to be a cyclist, but something I'm really into. And then, and so I'm kind of becoming this hybrid person that's wanting to have an active lifestyle. And I'm very fortunate to be in a place that supports that. And that's kind of become my second obsession, if you will, or passion.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good for
thank you.
you. It's good spiritually. It's good physically.
I agree.
Spread your wings, Jaime.
I agree.
Keep it up.
Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
let's get into it. Let's
Yeah.
get into it. Tell us about Proximo, if you will.
Yeah, so we are the creators of. Oftentimes, when you think of companies that own brands, you think, okay, yeah, that's great. You know, they're the brand owners and that kind. But what I take pride in more so than anything is that we are the creators of some very popular tequila brands, right? Such as
Absolutely.
1800, the world's, the U.S. Best-selling tequila brand in the U.S. We have, of course, Cuervo Tradicional. We have some innovations like Maestro Dobel. And the truth is, it's comprised of a portfolio that has a lot of provenance, a lot of heritage. Is very centric to agave culture. And in many ways spearheaded sort of what we today recognize or know and define as tequila, and has led the charge in the preservation of it, the denomination of origin. So there's a lot that has happened and transpired, and things that we have done as a company and as creators of not only brands in tequila, but also how we've championed the category international, that I think is very unique to our portfolio. You know, oldest tequila distillery in the world, right? And you're looking at a lot of tequila know-how, but more importantly, a lot of it's that firm foothold in tradition, past, the representation and the appreciation of it, and this innovative spirit, this other foot in ensuring that we have new things for people to discover. People that are into agave distillers, people that love tequila, that love mezcal, can find different ways to consume it, drink it, because ultimately, you know, people's palates do change. Consumer trends drive a lot of this. And palates are a part of that. I think we kind of undermine that at times, but the truth is, people are shifting to a certain style of spirit because they like the flavor nuances or what have you. It's something that people pay attention to, start to follow, right? But at the end of the day, I think that what's to be appreciated about tequila is that at its core, you have the agave, right? You have the plant itself that defines it, that gives it a very particular flavor that nothing else in the spirits world contains. But it also allows you to shift and go into places like añejos. As creators of the world's first añejo, which was with 1800, and as creators of the world's first extra añejo, which was with Reserva de la Familia, just goes to show just how we've driven sort of the tequila category forward, how it's sort of benchmarked ways in which other producers can come in and do their own style, their own version of an añejo, right? And it's not just we're the only ones that have this, but we established it, and we gave opportunity now for other people to create and make things.
You not only establish those standards, but you keep up with the trend and you keep moving that benchmark forward.
100%. So as people start to appreciate whiskeys and why they like tequila, they come back to it or are introduced to it for the first time because they like that. We also age. We also have blancos, right? We have tequilas that are completely unadulterated, unaged, that people go, you know what, this is phenomenal, this is great. I'm a gin drinker, therefore I like it. So I think pertaining to the breadth and versatility, I think that will always be at the core of what tequila is. But I think that going into cristalinos, for example, which is what we're here to talk about, especially our Cristalino Colección de Mexico, and why we dubbed it that, is because it's comprised of a lot of these established brands and their version. Each one has their own version of a Cristalino, right? Or their own expression within the Cristalino style of tequila, even though it's not formally part of the category yet. We think it's a subset, if you will. It's the best way to describe it. I think that is a great example of how you take tequila. It's not meant to take the place of an añejo, to take the place of a reposado, right? Or any aged tequila for that matter. It's one more dimension within that style of tequila that offers a completely new drinking experience or flavor proposition. And I think that's what we don't always understand,
tell us
right?
More.
Yeah,
Tell us more about Cristalino. How did it start? Where did it come from?
Well, Cristalinos first launched in 2008. We launched a brand called Maestro Dobel Diamante. That was the world's first Cristalino that was back, and that was a reposado, by the way, and that was back in 2008. Then Juan Domingo Beckman, 11th generation tequila maker, observed something out in market, and this is specific to Mexico, and that is that consumers were tending to get away from aged tequila, from aged spirits, and they're gravitating more to white spirits. So the notion came up, well, then how do we experiment? How do we create something that's going to appeal to people who both appreciate the smoothness that oak can bring and that level of complexity, all while in balance with what people might be gravitating towards when it comes to why a young spirit, right? And when I say young, bless you, no, when I say young, I mean spirits that aren't aged, right? That are traditionally classified as white. Because even though tequila is technically a white spirit, it does go through the process of aging in some cases. So it's an interesting observation, actually. You know, Juan Domingo Beckman, 11th generation tequila maker, and clearly someone that now has amassed all of this tequila know-how, started to look at the category and observe some interesting trends that were happening at the time. Now, this is back in 2008. We launched the world's first cristalino under Maestro Dobel Diamante. It's technically a reposado cristalino. But what gave birth to that notion or the exploration of that style of tequila really had to do with an observation out in market. And that's that consumers were sort of drifting away more and more and more from your aged tequilas or aged spirits and gravitating back to white spirits. And as we know, historically, that's an ebb and flow that comes and goes. It's happened throughout history.
Yes.
But at this point in time, it was, how do we keep folks who love tequila drinking our aged expressions, or how do we draw them in and give them that perhaps a new taste proposition, as I mentioned before, and that is sort of what inspired the notion to, well, what if we take what we've learned or what other spirit categories have done, and we borrow from them and start to explore how that affects tequila, right? And that's charcoal filtration, essentially. So what that did was, it's taking this complexity and this depth that everybody appreciates, right, from an aged spirit, regardless of the category, but particularly in tequila, and how do we bring it in balance with those notes that are typically associated with a young spirit. And by young, I mean a spirit that isn't oaked or isn't aged, right? That represents, you know, if it's a gin, it represents all of the different juniper notes and berries and all the different spices that are involved, right? You get the true appreciation for what that is. And when it comes to tequila, you want that agave, that brightness, that acidity, sort of that lightness, if you will. So after a few years of exploration and putting the brands through, or tequila through charcoal filtration, they got to a good point where the byproduct was the removal of color. So visually, you also get this sense that it's a lighter spirit. But when you dive in, I think the best part is what truly happens when it comes in contact with charcoal, and that is that some of those heavier oak tones, for example, Maestro del Diamante is an Eastern European oak aged tequila, and it's a multi-aged tequila, so it's comprised of reposados, añejos, and extra añejos that are aged first and then blended together before being put through that filtration process, right? So what it did was it allowed all those heavier oak tones. If we were doing deep chars, medium chars to the barrel, it allowed us to sort of temper down some of those heavier oak congeners or tones, or for any bartenders that are out there listening, right? Those molecules that we know, you know, tequila, like any other spirit, it's a great marriage between science and art and craft. But the science is how these molecules and how these flavor molecules develop. So it's an opportunity for us to temper those down and allow them to shine, allow the tequila to shine in balance with those bright notes that are typically associated with the Blanco. So it has a huge breadth, and I think people are just waking up to that, right? And again, it's not meant to supplement, it's meant to supplement, not overtake what we already know are really well established añejo, reposado, and aged tequila categories. It's more about how do we give it a new dimension. And so I think you'll find as you taste through these that they really truly are different. And when you do get the perception of oak and you do get all these nuances, you get a whole different level of flavor that I think when you think of application, you'll find that it really is, there is a huge palette and a big breadth of application, right? Because I think for a long time we were like, I'm sure you've heard this, Ashley. Oh, añejos were great in an old-fashioned. Well, rightfully so, because they contain a lot of oak, right?
Right.
This brand, you know, or rather gin works exceptionally well, or you can sub in tequila for a gin cocktail because it's also unaged, that kind of thing. But what you now have is you have cristalinos, which if we haven't defined them for the audience, it's basically an aged tequila or mezcal reposado añejo, or extra añejo, or a combination of all three, that are blended and or finished in other casks before being put through a charcoal filtration. Meaning the only way you can get a cristalino is if you have a tequila that has come in contact with oak. This is no longer us taking a white tequila and blending in some extra añejo, but really taking what's already been oaked or aged, rested, or long period aged, and then filtering it so that we get that balance of the bright agave notes, right, sort of dancing and singing on the palate, along with that oakiness and that overlay of oak that you get.
Somebody needs to create this experience because I would love to see, it be immersed with that oak and then like be filtered through the charcoal. I mean, I know people watch just like water going through filtration systems and waterfalls, but that's something that I would be interested in.
Yeah, because the thing with that is that, for the longest time, it's, as we're trying to demystify, as the creators and the leaders in this category, we're trying to demystify what it is that it is and what it is that it's not, right? And oftentimes
Yes.
people will go, hey, but why oak and then filter? And I'm like, well, here's the thing, this is not about us then removing what was just imparted, overlaid by the oak, but it really is about toning some of those nuances down so you get the essence of oak, you get the complexity, you get that breadth of nuance, if you will, without that. You ever had a whiskey that's just oak bomb and almost to the point where, or tequila for that matter, where you almost can't taste the agave, right? So this is that proposition that allows you the best of both worlds. And so I was mentioning where añejos were great are always said to be subbed in for an old fashioned. What I think we're finding is that cristalinos are taking shape in a very new way when it comes to how people are consuming them. I think when we first started out, back in 2008, it was take this great, delectable reposado that's finished in oak barrels, this, Nobel Diamante, and put it into, you'll see how smooth perhaps your margarita is. But then as people, got more and more into spirit forward cocktails and using tequila in that same light, it became, well, what else can we do with this and how else can we serve it so that we can respect the nuances, the delicate notes, all the complexity that's contained in this seemingly clear tequila that packs a lot of flavor and smoothness. How do we apply that to cocktails in a way that's elevated, in a way that promotes a drinking occasion, especially because they are at a premium as opposed to just putting them in a sour, right? So what we're finding is if you go across the country and you find more and more tequila menus, if you go back to Mexico and you look at all the world's top 50 best, for example, out of Mexico City, Guadalajara, etc., the use, if they're using cristalinos, the application really is, what if we created a martini? What if we created a Negroni? What if we created an old-fashioned riff? It's not, sometimes they're bespoke cocktails as well. They're not always classic format, but my point is that more often than not, they're finding that this, 1800 cristalino, which is technically an añejo, has certain port notes, berries, currant, all these notes that we think would work well in X cocktail, but still deliver that agave coming through, I think is now where bartenders are, and it's now what's shaping up to be the new style, if you will, the new way in which to enjoy cristalinos.
The respect that you all have for all of the nuances, I think, is what adds to the versatility of it all, right? And it just goes to show, I mean, it's number one top selling. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's driving the category forward, and you're right, because I think, I think we have to pay attention to consumers, right? And what they like ultimately, right? And that they are grasping onto this and they are adopting it. I think what it is for us, those people on the brand side, those of us that engage with the consumer and or gatekeepers, people that promote and sell our brands, is to demystify it a bit. You can imagine we get a lot of feedback as to like, well, why do this if you just spent all this time doing X? So why filter it when you just spend time oaking it? And I say it's exactly what you and I just spoke about. That's exactly my response. And I'll stand firm in saying that, at the end of the day, it's a new flavor proposition. We got to get out of our own way and stop thinking about, well, if you have an añejo, why would you have a cristalino añejo? Again, and so we're creating a subset of flavors as well. So respectfully, they're within the añejo categories or repo categories, but they are offering a new dimension of flavor. So for us, when we thought about comprising it into a colección so that the consumer started to understand within this collection comprised of 8 different, cristalinos between tequila and mezcal, you
Mm-hmm.
have a breadth of flavor. Some are finished. Again, we have the world's first añejo in there under 1800, finished in a port cask. We have
Mm.
we have an añejo under a Gran Centenario that's finished in a Calvados cask. All these things bring different dimensions and tertiary flavor profiles that I think when you look at this and you explore this from a portfolio standpoint, right? No longer just
Mm-hmm.
like the brands they belong to, these cristalinos, but really this cristalino portfolio in itself, I think you'll start to find and you'll start to appreciate just how varied, how nuanced, and how versatile all of the expressions
Yes.
are in their own right,
What is Cristalino Tequila? It's the latest innovation from Mexico and leading the future of tequila. Complex, yet smooth and bright. Cristalino is created using the same time-honored tradition of tequila making, yet explores the possibilities of innovation. And that's exactly how our story begins. For hundreds of years, tequila tasted similarly to mezcal. In response to changing tastes during the 18th century, vapor was introduced into agave cooking to create a smooth, more appealing tequila that we now know as blanco. In the 19th century, the next major innovation occurred. As consumers were turning to brandy and cognac, master distillers aged blanco tequila in barrels, giving rise to reposado, añejo, and extra añejo tequilas. In 2008, Juan Domingo Beckman, founder of Dobel Tequila and an 11th generation member of the Cuervo family, made another giant leap forward. As taste shifted to white spirits, a new generation of tequila drinkers longed for more accessible, premium and modern expressions of tequila that they could mix in cocktails. Beckman looked to techniques long found in rum, gin, whiskey, and vodka, and introduced activated charcoal filtration. This revolutionary step reshaped the future of tequila and resulted in the smoothest expression of tequila yet, capturing both the complexity of aged tequila with the crisp vibrancy of a blanco. In each bottle of the Cristalino collection, you'll find the taste of tradition and innovation with every smooth pour. Cristalino Colección de México.
So varied and expressional. And you know what? These holiday seasons are coming up, and people are going to be thinking about those family members, those close friends, people that mean the most to them, and just thinking of what to gift them with for this holiday season. Tell me, how can people get in touch with Cristalino and the different tastes?
That's a great one. You can go to flaviar.com where we have a Cristalino tasting box. And again, I can't stress enough the importance of tasting them side by side. So you can see one, what the subcategory is about, but two, that they really do differ from one another, right? As more and more people go, well, Cristalino is a style of tequila. If I have one, that's enough. And it's like, well, sure, it might meet the need depending on what you have behind your bar. But it's really about, I would say it's about approaching this the way you would wine, right? And really agave distillers, this applies to agave distillers in general. It's what nuances do you like from this producer, this manufacturer in terms of how they produce tequila, from inception, from how they manage their agave plants. Most of our products, for example, are state grown. So we see it soup to nuts from beginning to end. All those little nuances and those steps within each step of the process of tequila production net out at different flavor profiles. I mean, that's proven, right? You can go across several brands and you can see just how much they vary. So I think exploring the category on its own is also equally as interesting, the Cristalino category, because then you go, wait a minute, this Cristalino is nothing like this other one. So you can't even look at Cristalinos the same way anymore. It's not like, if you say añejo, you say, yeah, of course, they're all oaky, but when you think Cristalinos, you'd be surprised just how, I think that gamut gets even a little wider in terms of flavor.
So let's open our palates, widen our palates, for this holiday season. You have 2 tasting boxes, is that correct?
Well, we have a tasting box over at Flaviar, and then we have if somebody wanted to buy the bottle, is familiar. It's a big fan of, I don't know, is a big fan of Cuervo Tradicional or Gran Coromino. We have a Cristalino within those brands. So if you wanted to commit to a full size bottle, you can also go to barcart.com.
Awesome. So I believe we have the Cristalino is Forever at a Flaviar and a luxury set, I believe.
Oh, correct.
Yes, and you know what? The holidays are coming up. The price point is like just perfect. I mean, think about all the different flavors, the different tastes. Open your palate. open conversation between you and your loved ones and start with Cristalino.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's an interesting thing to taste with everyone else, and I think to your point, it is accessible and it allows you to taste through several and see where your palate lies, see what you like, what you're drawn to. And I love your addition of get together with people and talk, because I think spirits, but I think particularly tequila is meant to be convivial, right? It's meant to be shared.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how it started for me. 21, let's delve into life, and tequila was a part of it.
That's right.
Back in those days, but now this is grown adult wife, mother of 3, and I want to widen my palate, so Cristalino is next on my list.
I appreciate it. I think you're going to enjoy it. If you have any questions, let me know. If anybody out there has any questions, happy to continue the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Is there anything you'd like people to know that we didn't touch on?
No, I think the takeaway here, and I think the things to remember are just the versatility. If you're a craft cocktailian, if that's what you want to do at home, I'd encourage you, experiment with cristalinos. You'd be surprised you can take something like Gran Centenario Añejo, which is American white oak, finished in the Calvados casks, aged for minimum of 12 to 14 months. I particularly like, right? And then you have the additional time it spends in the Calvados cask. It's got a great acidity, it's got a great brightness to it. And my thought is, if you like something like that, then experiment with what that would act like or how that would showcase in your favorite old fashioned or in a Negroni. Because the thing is, it has all of the components to really make it shine. And you're going to be surprised at just how similar yet different it is, right? So you'll get some oak tonality, you get that coming through, but then there's all this other flavor. So I just say experiment. It really is truly versatile. On the rocks, in highballs, which I also love, in spirit forward drinks. Try it out, and I think you'll find a favorite amongst either our colección or just the broader category out there. But I think that's the name of the game. I think innovation is partly what we've really have focused on and has driven the category forward. But
Absolutely.
I think people's participation and equally being as either curious or innovative themselves allows them to step into this with an open mind, perception, and say, okay, what's this hubbub about, cristalinos? What's this Jaime guy talking about? Whatever it is.
Extra points, Jaime, if we can get you with a bottle and it coming down through the charcoal, and I need to see the boots. I want to see a hat.
Oh God, that would be, with AI now, I don't see a problem with that. I could just tell it to do all of that. I'll probably generate an AI image and forward it to you.
Yes. Well, Jaime, thank you for joining Shake Stir and Mingle. This was awesome. Definitely a lot of knowledge, a lot of tidbits in there. This was wonderful, and I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, Ashley. Thank you very much, and happy holidays to everybody out there.
Am I dreaming? No, I'm living in my dream.
Can I call you Rose? 'Cause you're sweet.